Tishde, Nare. Drops give it, Pugelo Chuchu. The Sunju to think, the PJ, Sunny Mongula Lenu, the Injilaship in a powerful chashu, the one in Nimaninga, Kalena, today the Tupana, the San Francisco, Butan and Nangi, the two Chishu. Daily and essential parts at number to Movishu, because organizer Koranji Sale Shunani, Tawachik Nis Niene, Tadinangito, Koranjula to Chishu. Any injured rope future. I briefly wanted to talk about the self-immolators. 143 people have literally poured gasoline on their body and offered their body like a lamp. A lot of people have been asking, why are Tibetans, why are followers of the Dalai Lama, why are Buddhists self-immolating? Now, a lot of people don't seem to understand that unlike in countries like America, if you have a grievance, if you have a problem, you go to your officials and complain. You write to a newspaper and complain. Or you have a rally and you can protest. You can't do any of those in Tibet. The newspapers are owned by the state, the officials, and if you are protesting, you are shot. Literally killed protesting. So how would people bring out their frustration? And one of the things as a Buddhist is, Buddhism actually says, you don't do harm for others. Any sacrifice that you make, it's for the betterment of other people. 142 self-immolations, not a single Chinese person has died. Not a single casualty. These were voluntary acts without hurting anybody for the cause of a nation. Self-immolators, each of them have stories, each of them have names. Stories ranging from a 15-year-old who poured gasoline and she was in a marketplace, and while her body was burning, Chinese business people were throwing stones at her. The first self-immolator in Tibet was Tape. Tape was on fire, and as he was burning down the street, Chinese police shot him. You shoot a person who's dying. And then he disappeared, and in about 2 years, we heard that Tape was still alive. His legs and his arms were amputated. And for years, every day, they would bandage his body and then rip off the bandage before the wound healed. His family was put into prison. The monastery that he was from, Kirti Monastery, people were arrested. Self-immolators are sending a message to China. Basically, they are telling the Chinese government that we are no longer afraid of you. The Chinese government has spent billions of dollars into Tibet and still not been successful in changing the minds of the Tibetans. Now the message that comes from the self-immolators are, we are no longer afraid of you. How can you put fear on someone who's willing to die? So, as far as in Tibet is concerned, now we have Repkong, where young students are marching and protesting on the street. They are risking bullets, batons, imprisonment. These children, and most of the self-immolators actually, over 80% of them were born after China invaded Tibet. They were born, and the only world they've seen, the life they've seen, is life under the Chinese regime. They have no idea. I mean, they have not heard of, they have not seen the Dalai Lama. They can Google about what happened in 1959. There is no information. Everything changed in 2008. 2008, your city played a very important role. All of you played a very important role. You showed to the world that we are not okay with what's happening in Tibet. Tibetans in Tibet were not okay with the Chinese being in there. Tibetans were killed, countless Tibetans. There were bodies that were not, lying on the streets. When Tibetans in Tibet thought that the Beijing Olympics is going to move the focus into China, the world would look into what's happening in China, nothing changed. The Olympics happened. And you all took a stand, a very brave stand. In 2008, a whole new generation of Tibetans saw that they were different. They were treated different. They did not have the same rights as their Chinese counterparts. They were not allowed to go to school. If you go for a job, you had to speak Chinese. That built up. The self-immolation isn't some immediate, overnight reaction to Chinese policies. It's built in. The nomads of Tibet. Now, Tibetans, if a lot of people don't know how we live life like your old West, like your Western movies. We love the mountains. We are out there. But when the Chinese government started pushing the nomads out of the meadows, forcing them into resettling them into different houses that were literally, we've got cases of houses falling down. And Tibet was exploited for mining. They were nomads who self-immolated because of property. Each of the self-immolated had a story to tell. Some self-immolated for language, some for religion, some for freedom, some for independence. But all of them had a very consistent message. Every one of them. They wanted His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama to return to Tibet. That is consistent with all of them. Now the Chinese government says His Holiness the Dalai Lama is provoking, is pushing for the self-immolations. I've talked to a lot of Chinese people and I tell them, if His Holiness ever, he wouldn't, but if he ever said Tibetans self-immolate, the numbers would not be in hundreds, it'd be in thousands. That's what the Chinese don't understand. What the Chinese don't understand is when His Holiness is at a Kala Chakra teaching and talking about not wearing furs, animal furs. Next day in Tibet, out in the streets, Tibetans are burning furs, animal furs, and banning wearing any animal skin. That is what China doesn't understand. After 56 years, nothing has changed in Tibet. Younger generation who's never seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama are burning themselves to get him back to Tibet. Now the Dalai Lama, His Holiness going back to Tibet isn't just a religious, one of our root gurus going back to Tibet. His Holiness is a symbol of Tibet. He is a symbol of a nation. When he comes back to Tibet, not only is he giving hope to the Tibetans living in Tibet, but he knows, like the Chinese government knows, when His Holiness comes back to Tibet, things will change in Tibet. Tibetans in Tibet have made that demand consistent, extremely consistent. Now, when we live in exile, I keep talking about believing. In 1959, after the March 10th, today, after 56 years, the reason His Holiness and all our parents and some of you came in from Tibet believing that you would return back home someday. We said that we would be back to Tibet. Our brothers and sisters in Tibet believe that we were returning back. They still believe. They still are waiting. Nobody in Tibet has given up on us. We haven't given up on them. So every March 10, when you come out, when you're out in the street protesting, we are protesting because they can't. We say free Tibet because they can't. We are calling for the return of the Dalai Lama because they can't. The times that they do are when they are burning themselves, when they're killing themselves. So when we raise our voice, we become the voice of the voiceless. Tibetans in Tibet are expecting that from us. It's the least we can do. It's the very least. Come out, speak for them. Because end of the day, we believe that we will return. We believe that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama will be back in Tibet. And if we stop believing that, then we kill the movement. The day we stop protesting, the movement dies. Like I said this morning, the Tibetan uprising in 1959 has not ended. It's a movement that has been going on for 56 years. And it will continue. Because we made a promise. We made a promise to our brothers and sisters in Tibet that we would come back. And we would bring His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama back to Tibet. Are you willing to fulfill that promise?
Yes!
Are you willing to take His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama back to Tibet?
Yes!
That is all we need. Take a moment as Tibetans. That's the responsibility that we have. We are in exile. We need to go back home. And we will go back home. And I believe that we will go back home. Pegalo. Free Tibet.
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet!
Pegida.
Thank you very much.